Hello guys, so today I'm going to be talking about struct and why do we need struct. Struct is very important because there's some situation that we need to group data together. So let's say for example, you as a student, you need to have, ID, your name, and let's say GPA, or let's say we're trying to run a gym membership business and the customer need to have ID, they need to have name, and they need to have weight. So we need to take record of their weight, and that weight can actually be in form of decimal. So in this situation, it's very difficult for us to group them together because they have different data type, and because they have different data types we can't store them inside one variable, and that's why we have to use structs. Without structs it's going to be difficult for us to do that, and our program is going to be messy and it's not going to make sense. Let's say you're trying to store record of customers that are up to 1000, so you have the 1000 customers that you need to store, and we can't store them inside one variable, so it's going to be messy and it's going to be difficult for us to access the data. So because of this we try to use struct, and these are steps for us to create struct. These are the steps to create struct. First of all, we need to define the data definition. It actually means you're trying to tell compiler how you want your struct, the things you want your struct variables to have. So let's say I'm trying to make to create variable, and I want this variable to have character name. So name is going to have name variable, it's going to have integer variable, it's going to have float variable, and this your compiler needs you to tell him all of this at first. That's why it's always come first, data definition. So if you want me to do something for you, you need to tell me the instruction first before I'm going to do it, and that's what that actually means. So how do we define this data? So first of all, we need to use struct because we try to create an instruction for struct. So it's actually an instruction, so you're trying to give an instruction to the compiler that this is how I want my struct variable to be declared. It's just as simple as that. I want my variable to have 2 head and 1 nose. I want my variable to have 2 ears and 5 hands, or five fingers. So it's just as simple as that. So it's just like you're trying to tell, you're trying to give instruction of how you want your variable to look like, and this is the simplest way for us to understand this. So you have to tell him, so compiler need you to tell him first before it's going to create this variable, and that's why it always comes first. So now we need to struct, and we're going to name this instruction gym. So because this instruction is going to be for our gym variable, so we're going to name it gym, and we need to open a curly bracket, and inside this curly bracket we're going to write in the instruction. So first of all, we're going to declare this. So here we're trying to tell compiler that this struct is going to have ID, and this ID is going to be an integer data type, so that's why I'm using int. So it's going to have integer data type and also name, so I'm going to be using character data type, so name, and I'm going to be using 15 high size, and we need to take the weight of these people. So I'm going to be using float because you can actually have situation where someone is weighing 15.5 or 60.2 or something like that, so that we can actually store the decimal number. So I'm going to be floating that, so it's going to be weight, and we're going to close this bracket, and don't forget This is just a statement, so we still have to use semicolon because it's a statement, it's not a function. So I don't want you to make a mistake when you think, because most times we use curly bracket for functions, for loop functions. So each time we close that, we don't use, we don't use semicolon. Semicolon is for statement. So each time you make a statement, you have to use semicolon. And because function is not a statement, so function is just a function, so it's not a statement. That's why we're not using semicolon after function. So each time you open and you close your loop, you don't use, semicolon after that, because it's not a statement. So this is a statement, and it's a struct. It's a statement because it's an instruction. So you try to tell compiler, do this for me. So it's a statement, and that's why we have to use, semicolon at the end of the curly bracket. So now what we need to do next, we need to declare the struct variable. This is struct variable declaration. So here we've not declared the variable here. So we need to take note that we've not declared the variable here. We only tell compiler how we want our struct variable to look like, what we want our struct variable to have. We want it to have id, name, and weight. So it's just an instruction. So here we're going to be declaring the variable. And how do we do that? We have to struct again. So we're going to be using struct again and gem. So we're going to be telling compiler that we want to use this instruction. So gem is an instruction, so we want to use this instruction. That's why we have to use gem. So this variable is going to have this gem instruction. You can actually give so many instructions, and then you're going to start declaring different variable and be using different instruction for them. So if I don't use gem here, if I use something else, or r, then compiler is going to tell me that I don't know what you mean by t. There is no instruction called t, so there's no instruction called t. So that's why I have to use gem here, because I've actually declared that instructions earlier. So here I'm going to name it. I'm going to name this customer 1. So let's say we can actually have many customer, like 10,000 of that. So I'm going to be writing that customer 1. So this variable is going to take the data, is going to contain the data of the customer, so the first customer. So if we want to have several data, we're going to be talking about that later on, and we can't actually create 10,000 variables because we want to store 10,000 customer. That does not make sense. So it does not make sense. We can't create 10,000 variables because we want to store data of 10,000 customers. So after, I'm going to be talking about that, how we do it, because this struct is also a variable. So you need to know that struct is a variable, but it's a special type of variable that actually store related data. So because of this, it's not declared the same way we normally declare variable. So we have, because of it, we have to define the data first, and then we have to declare the variable. But apart from that, it behaves the same way. So it has its own pointer, it has its own you can actually have array. We can have array of structs. So we have so as time goes on, we're going to be talking about that. So there are so many situations that we need to use that, but this is going to help us to understand the foundation of using structs, and we're going to be able to group our data and data record. So here now I'm going to declare this as struct gem course, so course 1, and now I've declared the variable, And there are other way for us to write this together if we want to declare the variable and also define the data with one statement. There's a way we can actually do that, but I can't show you now until we get to VS Code. So after this, we're going to be assigning values. So assignment. So if we want to assign values, first of all, we need to write the name of the variable, which is this. So we need to write the name of the variable. Then we're going to use dot. Then we're going to indicate the name of the variable we define inside the instruction. So here, so firstly, the name of the variable is course1 dot id. So if you want to assign into id, then you're going to use id. If you want to assign into name, then I'm going to use name. So here, and we can see that this name is actually an array, so we can actually assign values in form of array. So let's say here I'm trying to assign values the first array, and I'm trying to assign character. So here we're going to have character here. Let's say I'm trying to put the name of the person is John, so it starts with J. So I'm going to put that first. So this is assignment. So I'm just trying to give you an example of assigning values. So let's say I want to assign again. So I'm going to use the same thing, course1 dot id equal to 25. So this is the ID of the customer, and the name of this customer is J. And I'm trying to assign like this because I can't assign the full name like this because it's not going to work. We've talked about that. The reason why we can't assign, we can't assign strings directly. So we talked about that. If you didn't know about that, you can actually watch my intermediate playlist where I talk about strings and I explain why we can't assign like that and why it's not possible. So here, this is how we assign. This is assignment. So we just try to, now if we try to print this, then it's going to display 25. In this case, let's say for example I'm trying to print the variable, so it's going to display so here I'm trying to print this course1 dot id. So let's say here I'm trying to print this, so this is going to display 25, so it's going to give me the 25 I store here. So this is how structs work. So in my next video I'm going to open my VS Code and I'm going to be trying all of these. I'm going to explain this. This is just the first part, and I'm going to, we're going to program. So I'm going to program. I'm going to declare struct variable, and I'm going to write different ways for us to actually, write this statement. So it's not a must. So I'm going to be doing that inside VS Code. So if you find this, useful, please like this video, subscribe to this channel. See you guys next time.